In today's episode, we're going to start looking at test doubles. Hi, I'm Mark Bradley, and welcome to Testing All the Things, a screencast in which we use live coding to demonstrate different testing tools and techniques. Today we're going to start looking at test doubles. We use test doubles to ensure any dependencies of the code under test are completely under our control. Today we're going to start looking at the simplest form of test double, a stub. So let's look at some code. To demonstrate different types of test doubles, we are going to implement this driving license generator. The purpose of this class will be to have a single function that generates a driving license number for a given applicant. In today's episode, we are going to just use stub test doubles. These are the simplest form of test double. They just implement the interface of the dependency and return hard-coded values. For our first test, we want to ensure that a driving license applicant must be of the correct age. So let's get started with our first test. New test, age applicant cannot generate license. There we go. Excellent. So as we want to an exception to be thrown when an underage applicant makes an attempt to generate a license, we need to expect the exception to be thrown at the top of the test. So let's do that. So we expect an exception. Now I've already created a specific type for this already, so we'll use that. So it's invalid driver exception. There we go. And we want a specific message, so this we can also expect the exception message. There we are. And we can say applicant is too young. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So there's our setup. Okay. Now, I've also already generated a interface for a licensed applicant. This currently doesn't have any functions that are assigned to written into it. So we need to think about how we want our code to work now. So we're looking for an underage applicant. So our license applicant should probably have a function, something like get age. So let's add that to our interface. Public function get age, and that can return an int. There we go. Okay, cool. So now our interface allows us to kind of get the age of an applicant. We can continue with the implementation of our test. So let's go back to that. So we need an invalid applicant, so an underage applicant. So or let's just call this the variable applicant, keep it nice and short and readable. Applicant equals okay. So we don't have anything that yet implements the license applicant, and as it's a test double, we want complete control over it. So here's where we're going to create our stub. So what we shall do is we shall create a class that implements the license applicant interface under our test, because obviously we don't want this accessible to our production code. So we can create no, not a file. We want to create a class. Let's let the IDE do all the hard work for us. So let's call this under age applicant. There we go. And we want to sit that under the test namespace. Test. There we go. Okay, so we've got our underage applicant. That's a class. Let's have it sit just under the base there. There we go. That's nice. Okay, cool. So we now have an underage applicant class. So we know it needs to implement the interface, so implements license applicant. There we go. Okay, so our IDE is already warning us that this won't work because we are missing a function now. So if we generate the method, there we are. Excellent, nice and easy. Okay, so what can we do here? So in the UK, you have to be 17 to drive. So for the purpose of this test, we will assume anyone under the age of 17 is an invalid applicant. So we can just return 16. There we go. Okay, excellent. That was quite simple. Okay, now we go back to writing our test and we can use our stub. So underage applicant. Oh, so we need a new one really. So let's new underage, under applicant. Okay, so there's our stub all set up, ready to be used. So we can now instantiate the code under test. So we will create a generator variable generator equals new, and we call this driving license generator. Let's get that up. Driving license generator. There we go. Okay, that was easy enough. And we can do generator generate number. There we go. Cool. And that needs to take the applicant. Okay. Cool. So our IDE is already telling us that if we run the test, it's going to fail because the method doesn't exist. So we can let the IDE create that method for us. Lovely. Okay, so it's create a method, public, yes. Okay, now the IDE has been a bit clever here, and it's assumed that the type we're giving is the type we want to take on this function here. So we know that's not true. We want it to be an interface, not a concrete. So we're going to switch it to be license applicant. There we go. Okay, and I think applicant as a variable name is quite fine. Okay, so that's great. So our code here is all valid. Our test code is all valid and will run. So we'll run our test now. Okay, and it's failed asserting that any exception is thrown. Okay, so quite easy to make this pass. We can throw a new exception of the type invalid driver exception. There we go. Cool. Save and run the test. Okay, and we've still got an assertion failure saying, so the message is empty, but we're expecting applicant is too young. So let's make that pass. So applicant is too young. There we go. That's already added. Excellent. Save. And we can rerun our tests. Excellent. So we have a passing test. That's brilliant. Okay. So let's just have a little tidy up, remove that function, remove that blank line. Okay. And right, let's just tidy this up so it's all on the screen, readable. Lovely. Okay. So we know that an invalid applicant is someone who is too young. So now we need to think about what else could be an invalid applicant. So we could have that if you already have a license, that's an invalid application. So let's move on to a second test. So we'll create a new test. Test license holder cannot generate license. There we go. Okay, so we can expect an exception. So we're looking for an exception again. We'll expect an exception, and we'll use the same type, invalid driver exception. This time we're obviously going to look for a different message. So this expect accept. There we go. Oh no, we want the message this time. There we go. Okay, so we can say cannot hold more than one license. There we go. Okay. So there we go. So we now need to think back to our license applicant interface. So we've got age, and we can do a new function onto our interface. So let's think about it. So public function holds license. There we go. And that returns a ball. Excellent. Okay. So now this is an underage applicant. But it doesn't implement our interface. So we'll just fix that quickly. Add method needs to return. So return false. They do not hold license, but that's all good. Okay, but we probably need a new stub now to for our next test. So let's create a second stub, new class, license holder applicant. Cool. And namespace it right, so it's in the tests namespace. There we go. And that's a class, and we'll generate it. Excellent. Okay, so this one needs to be of the correct age. Oh, so well, we need to first implement our interface. So it is the license applicant interface. Okay, and our ID is telling us that we are not. There we go. Okay, so we need to be of an age that we can hold a license. So we can return 18. There we go. And we need to already hold a license. So we can return Drew. There we go. Okay. Why is it not? There we go. Excellent. So there is our license holder applicant, and hopefully that should go green now. It's got a red wiggly line. No, it should be fine. I think our ID is just having some fun. So we again create the applicant create so applicant equals, there we go, instantiate the what do we call it, license holder applicant, and we can just take these two lines quickly with copy and paste, speed up the typing. There we go. Okay, so all of the code exists, it's all runnable, so we can run two tests now. Okay, and we have got a failure. So failed asserting that exception message, applicant is too young, where we're looking for cannot hold more than one license. Okay, so how can we fix that? So let's go to our code. Here we go. So what we can do is we can put an if dollar applicant get age is less than 17. There we go. Then we throw this exception. So there we go. And then what we can do is throw a new invalid driver exception and say, well, let's just speed things up and copy and paste here. And stick it on some lines so it can all be red. There we go, lovely. Okay, so hopefully that should be our two tests passing. Excellent, there we go. So we've got two stubs and our test pass, which is lovely. So I think that's enough for invalid drivers. Let's move on now to a valid driver. So public, oh no, we just generate a test, so new test method, valid applicant can generate license. There we go. Okay, cool. So that's nice and simple. So we now need a new stub that creates a valid license. So for today's example, we're not going to look at actually generating the license. We'll just look at kind of ensuring that the exception is not thrown for now. And then in the next episode, we'll start looking at license generation and a few other bits. So for now, we just need a new, let's call it a new class. We'll call it valid applicant. There we go. Okay, and just put under the test namespace so it's clear. There we go. And we want it to be generated there, and class, and away we go. Excellent. So we've got a valid applicant. It implements the license applicant. Okay. So we need to generate those stub functions for us. Thank you. So it needs to be of an age that can generate license. So we will return 21, and it needs to not yet hold a license. So we can return false. Okay, there we go. Right, that was simple. So now we can go back to our test. So we're not expecting any exception, so we can just create our new applicant. So applicant equals new valid applicant. There we are. And we can just take these lines again quickly. Copy, paste. Lovely. Okay, so save. Excellent. Right, let's make that a bit more readable. There you go, sorry about that. Okay, so if we run our tests now, okay, so we've got a failing test. We are getting an exception saying it can't hold more than one license. So we can make this pass quite easily by adding another if. If the applicant holds a license, well, that's not right, is it? It's if they hold license, yes, we want to throw the exception. Sorry, go back to not the wrong bit. There we go. So excellent, cool. So hopefully that will make our test pass. Oh, it doesn't. This test is not perform. Okay, so it's not performing any assertions yet, but our test passed. So that's good. We will look later at what the actual generation of a license looks like, but for now, this is kind of the demonstration of stubs over. So we have a slightly quite nice little bit of code here. We could probably clean it up with refactor, but for now that looks quite neat and clean. We can leave that as is for now. But our tests are quite clear what's going on because of our three different stubs. So we have our underage applicant stub, our license holder stub, and our valid applicant stub that all implement the interface of the license applicant. And during this part of the testing, we don't really care about how the license applicant code is implemented at all. And actually, during the next couple of videos, we will not even look at the implementation of that. We are just going to concentrate on the driving license generation code. I hope that's given you a nice demonstration of how to use stub test doubles. And for today's demonstration, that's where we're going to leave it. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode on stub test doubles. If you did, please leave a comment and review the video. If you didn't, please leave a comment and I will try and improve the next videos. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at Braddle. Or if you just want to listen to things about testing, then follow me on @testingallthe. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.